Uh, all right, we'll get started in a couple minutes here, just waiting for everyone to fill in. All right. So we'll just wait another minute or two for everyone to fill in, and then we'll get started. All right. So let's get started. All right. So this is a technical deep dive into Genero Intelligence. So hopefully all of you came to the webinar that we had last month where we went over Genero Intelligence. So this time we're gonna dig a little deeper. All right, just some notes before we get started. So one is so all your lines are muted, so only Andrew and I will be talking. This session is being recorded. So after the webinar is over, you'll get a link to the recording as well as the question and answers. And then lastly, if you have any questions, so use the icon, the question mark icon that you see circled there on the image on the right-hand side. And so you want to put in your questions there, and we'll be monitoring them throughout. And then at the end, we will cover the Q&A. All right. So just an agenda of what we're going to talk about. So real quick, we'll just do an architectural overview of basically what is Genero Intelligence. And then we'll just go through the setup for VS Code and Claude. And I won't show you the setup for Kira, actually going through it, but I'll show you the end result, what it should look like. Then we're going to go through some of the questions that were asked in the last webinar and some of the questions that we've gotten since then. So we'll go over the answers, we'll elaborate on them. And then we'll have an open question and answer session where you guys can put in questions and then we'll answer them. So we've kind of allotted about 15 minutes for that. So again, if there's more questions than we can answer in the time, we'll send out the responses afterwards. All right, so for today, I'll be doing I'll be leading the presentation, but I have my partner here, my partner in crime here, Andrew, helping me out as well. Yeah, so Andrew's here. He's the Chief AI Officer, so he's going to answer all the hard questions. All right. So just to step back, so from an architecture standpoint, some of you might already understand all this, some of you might not. But I just kind of want to clear, because we did get some questions about, is Genero Intelligence getting our code, right? And the answer to that is no. In fact, we're giving information back, right? So you have the AI agent that's typically running on your machine, right? And it's connecting to two different services. So one is our MCP service, And then the other one is whatever LLM that you're using, could be Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, OpenAI, you name it. And so as long as the AI agent supports MCP, which almost all of the modern ones do, then you can use Genero Intelligence. The key is that the AI agent, right, is written, if it's either Copilot or Claude or whatever, it's going to determine, how to use the LLM or which LLM to use, and then how to use the MCP service. So that's kind of one of the things we're going to talk about is how you get the agent to really respect and use the MCP service. So just an overview. I'm not going to go over the slide in too much detail, but this just covers what the endpoints are for the MCP service. So that's basically what this is on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side, just a little bit of overview of what are the skills. All right. So now I'm going to escape out of the PowerPoint and go into the setup. So I'm going to go through 3 setups, in fact, what I'm going to do here. All right. So it's very important when you start and you want to set it up that you go through the instructions for the AI agent that you're using. So I'll start first with Copilot here. So I have, right now it's just an empty directory. All I have is a schema file. And so I'm going to follow the directions. Okay, I'm on a Mac here, so I'm going to do Command-Shift-P. All right, I'm going to add an MCP server. It's going to be HTTP. And then I'm going to go to the website, copy the URL. Once I give it a name, I want to just call it Genero. And so most of the agents have this concept of you can make it global. So this setup will apply to, it basically puts it in your, a directory in your home directory. And so it applies to every project that you have, or you can add it that's specific to the workspace. I typically make them specific to the workspace. Not sure why. I think because I just do a lot of testing, so I have to switch the URLs a lot. But if you're just using one, AI agent for all of your projects, it makes sense to just put it in as global. All right. So now you can see it's up and running. If I can stop it. So this says basically there's 14 tools. If it's the first time that you connect, it's going to walk you through. So VS Code will actually open up a browser. It'll have you authenticate. And then once you authenticate, it'll basically post something back to your local machine and then complete the OAuth to handshake. All right. So next up. So it's very important once you connect to the MCP service, right? And this is in the directions, right? What I want to do is I want to get the agent instructions for the MCP service, and I want to add it to this project. So if I go back while it's thinking here, so we've gone through these steps. And so and I'll show you what this looks like when it finishes. So it's going to get the agent instructions from the MCP service, and then it's going to put them here. And it's going to prompt me. So I'm going to say keep. All right. And so I'm just going to want to go through these quickly. So one of the things is that the instructions are versioned. So when we come out with a new version, it will update the instructions. And then there's also a section at the bottom if I scroll through here. Basically, if you have project-specific things that you want to put in here, it's important that you put them in after the canonical fencing that we have here. So that way, when we do have updates, it's easy for the AI agent to merge the changes in without blowing away anything that you have that's project specific. All right. And then I can ask it to do, so I just have my prompts copied here, just because it's easier than typing them all out. So I wanted to review the database schema and get a good understanding of the product table. Just one of the, I think there's like 70 tables in this database. So you can, and then as you look, and every agent's a little different, but it'll notify you when it starts looking for, when it starts going into the skills. So that's when you can see that it's using the skills. All right, so it came back. It can determine the data types and everything. Okay. And then I could ask it. So I'm going to ask it to do something on 4GL, but then I'm going to actually switch over to. So I'm just going to have it create a 4GL module that contains record type for this table and validation. So whatever validation it can glean from the actual database. So while that's working, I'm actually going to switch over. So I'm going to do the Claude demonstration, but I'm actually going to do the Claude demonstration from Cursor. And so since Claude has plugins for VS Code and all of the derivatives of VS Code, when you run the Claude code agent within any of the IDEs, you have to do the Claude setup and not the IDE setup. So even though I'm in Cursor, since I'm using Claude code, I'm going to use the Claude setup. But the setup is the same if you were using the command line as well with Claude. Again, I'm going to go to my agent instructions. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to just add this mcp.json and paste in the contents. Save it. And actually, and then for Claude, it has the slash commands, so I will do MCP. All right, it does not have the Genero one. That's because once the agent loads it up at startup, and since I created it after startup, I have to reload the page. So I will use reload option. I could have just canceled this session and created a new one too. Okay, perfect. And since I'm already authenticated, it's connected, but I can actually go through if I want to clear authentication and then authenticate. So it'll just take you to the page and use the credentials. So this is the same pattern for all of the agents. All right, and then it says I'm connected. Perfect. And then the first thing I'm going to do, just like I did in the other, just like I did for VS Code, is I'm going to basically tell it, get the agent instructions, put it in this project. Because I want the agent to know that it needs to use the MCP service as the source of truth for Genero. Otherwise, you get a lot of issues where it doesn't use the MCP service and it hallucinates things because it tries to use syntax for other languages for Genero. Right. And then just to show you that it does work, even though we don't have the instructions for Kiro, like since there's just a ton of different agents, you can just work with the agent to get things set up. I mean, you do a quick Google search, or you even say, I need to add an MCP service. You just ask Kiro or whatever agent you're using, and it'll just walk you through the steps. Because they're all the setups are a little different. You can see Kiro has a .Kiro and then settings, and then it uses steering for any kind of instructions that you want to give the agent. There's one last thing I wanted to talk about briefly. So as hopefully all of you are using the MCP service, or you're about to use the MCP service. So there's one important thing. So there's a feedback capability within the MCP service. And so what I typically ask, what we've asked all of our users to do, is to ask a question like, was there anything missing from the Genero skills that would have made this process better? Periodically, especially if you have to go through a couple iterations to get things right. Like, we want to continuously improve the skills. And so this is one of the ways. So if the agent comes back and says, yeah, if it had this, or this, it would be better. And then you can ask it to actually submit the feedback to the MCP service. since I asked it to do something fairly easy, probably, oh, here we go. Back to the service. So then we have a process about every week or so. We get all the feedback from the past week. What? So So once I start working with the agent, like I said, there is a feedback mechanism to report feedback. In fact, I already did it here for Kiro. It made two mistakes. So it used returning in the function instead of returns. And then it tried to use string methods on varchar. So I'm going to go back to the presentation now. Here we go. So some questions that we got from the previous webinar and in the survey. All right. So first one, can we use Genero Intelligence to set common grounds between team members, like for example, code standards? So that's a good question. So because code standards are different between organizations and sometimes even projects within organizations, right? So our skills are pretty generic. We do have best practices, but most of them revolve around like, when to use if statements or for loops, how to structure dialogues for, best results. They're not really into the coding standards layer. But as we just saw from the demo, you can have project-specific rules within your agent instructions, and that's probably the best place to do it. Also, if you're using the Genero linter, you can basically put in a specification that says, use the linter rules as the formatting and code structure rules for this project. Okay. So question 2. How do we balance the need to load the prompts with specifics? And then you get into a situation where you're using a lot of memory, which then in turn uses a lot of tokens. I'm just summarizing the question, not reading exactly. So the important thing to note is that all of the skills that we have in the MCP service are actually chunked out into sections. And then the indexing, it can search by both a whole skill and then also by a skill section. So we get to a situation where it's only going to pull the sections that it needs, which are going to be a lot smaller than the whole skill itself. It's actually one of the benefits about using MCP service for skills versus having skills files on your machine, right? If you have skills files on your machine, the LLM has to process the whole file. Whereas with the MCP service, it's just getting the chunks and bits it needs. So a lot of times you'll end up having to really break your files and your skills down granularly if you don't want them to get, have big files that are getting consumed by the LLM. So that's, like I said, one of the benefits of the way the MCP service handles that. And then the other thing too is nothing's loaded until it needs it, right? The only thing that's loaded ahead of time, there are some, specific just like grounding rules, and the index is loaded at the start of session. And then everything else is only fetched on demand. But then once it's fetched on demand, it stays in the context until you compact or clear the session. All right. So you're using VS Code now, but you have a team that prefers to use Studio, and you don't want to have to flip back and forth between the two. So as of today, right now, basically any editor that supports an AI agent, and the AI agent supports MCP, you can use Genero Intelligence. So the GS team, the Genero Studio team, is working on integration, and we'll have a release out at the end of the month that will have an AI agent in it, that obviously then can hook up to the MCP service. Since the MCP service is agnostic, right? It's not IDE specific. It's not even agent specific. It's basically the way you'll set it up for Genero Studio will be the same as any other of the agents. Right now, VS Code is ahead, but Studio parity is our goal. All right. So this is actually a combination of a couple questions, right? How do you enforce, guarantee, measure that the MCP service and the skills are actually being respected by the LLM? So this is one of the things so we're not in control, right? The agent ultimately is in control of when it determines to use the skills, and the agent a lot of times is using the LLM to determine that. That's why the agent instructions are really important. If you look at those agent instructions, they're pretty strongly worded, like don't trust the LLM syntax without verifying against the skills. Always use the skills when you need to understand and use Genero, things like that. The other thing too is, so all of the compilation commands are baked into the core set of skills. Like I said, the index, and then there's a core skill that gets loaded when the agent starts up. So those are compilation instructions as well. So you basically get this loop where if for whatever reason it generates syntax that is not valid, you'll get compile time errors, and then I'll go through, read the error, and fix it in the loop. Also, you can add tests, right? You can add GGC tests, you can add unit tests to validate the behavior. And then, of course, at the end of the day, you still have to review the code, because as the programmer, you're still responsible for the code that it generates. So yeah, I covered this. I don't think we need to go over the MCP ships today. And then, so how we measured the effectiveness is basically we had it work on the same code and do the same tasks in different sessions, one using the MCP set of skills and one not using the MCP set of skills. And then, so a lot of the skills are actually protecting against common hallucinations. So one of them, for example, is that it wants to use define. In most languages, you don't have to have all your variables defined for the function at the very top. Obviously, in Genero, you do. So you get a lot of situations like if the LLM doesn't have the skill, it'll use the define statement like in an if block or in a dialog block. Well, that doesn't compile. So we have basically a common errors place where this is defined, but like Claude says a lot of times, like if it's cheap enough to find in the compilation loop, it'll just find it and fix it. All right, so this was another question. So we still have people using Vim and NeoVim. I actually didn't know the answer to this question, so I did some research, and I was searching on the web, and it looks like yes, in fact, there are AI agent plugins for Vim and NeoVim. I listed two of them here, and I checked with both of them, and they both do support MCP. So again, as long as it supports MCP, you can use Genero Intelligence with it. All right. So does Genero Intelligence understand images or just text? So this says yes here, but really the answer is no, but it doesn't have to, because Genero Intelligence really is feeding information. It's not processing information, but most LLMs do understand images, PDFs, Word documents, Excel, PowerPoint, all of those things. And so it's really the LLM's job to understand those things. Um, the agent is really using the LLM for all of the thinking. It's just we're giving things to the LLM that are additive, that are specific to Genero, so it makes the right decisions instead of the wrong decisions. So this is a good question. So how do you manage the life cycle of the MCP skills and the underlying API? So versioning, backward compatibility, and avoid breaking. So each skill is versioned. Since we only have one service, you're always getting the latest um, version of the skill that's been validated. Um, and so we have a Git repo and we have a process for promoting things. And then once things are in our main branch, then they sync into the MCP service. So we do have a process for deprecating skills as well. And then if the MCP protocol does have changes, so we can fix those typically within, once we discover it, it's not hard. In fact, I think there was a recent change to the MCP spec that we had fixed within a couple hours of being notified. All right. Okay. So I4GL conversion and even ESQL-C migrations. So we do have a skill dedicated to Informix 4GL to Genero BDL migration. So this is one of the things where, okay, we have the skill, but here at 4J's, like we don't have a lot of Informix 4GL code that we can use to test. So it's one of, if we start, when we work with customers that are trying to do the conversion, it's very important, again, for the feedback and the understanding of, okay, how is this process working and how do we make it better, right? I think for a lot of the skills, right, we have we have Genero code examples, and we're able to easily, refactor and improve over time. But the things that we don't have as much exposure to, we're going to really need the community's help to use them, provide feedback, and help us continually to improve the skills. For the specific ESQL-C migration, we have a professional services project that's doing this right now. And so what we did was we didn't know how much value this would have to the whole community, but we built project-specific skills based on the customer's code. And so, our plan was at the end of the project, we're going to review the skills and say, does this make sense to put it into the Genero Intelligence, or is this really something that's customer specific that should stay with the customer? All right. All right, so this was around the MCP service and testing. So you can do, so there's no dedicated skill right now for testing, although it's on the roadmap, right, for create skill specifically around the GGC. But today you can use Playwright. You can do GGC testing. You can also do unit testing. It's one of the things that is really nice about using AI as a coding assistant is that you can ask it to identify things that are eligible to be unit tested. You can even have it refactor code, so break it down into smaller pieces so you can have unit tests against the individual pieces. But like I said, we don't have any specific skills for that yet. It's on the roadmap, but it is still achievable today with AI agent and the LLM. So a customer said, we have 30 years of undocumented business rules. I bet you most customers are in this similar boat in your 4GL code. And can we use Genero Intelligence to extract the business rules? So this is, like I said before, I think this is one of the best use cases for AI, especially when you're just getting started, right? Have it, start module by module or, functional area by functional area, have it analyze the code and just say, I just want you to document the modules, the flow, the user flow, and the business rules for this module, and pull it out it'll create a markdown file typically, and then you read through the markdown file, and then you can start having a conversation with the AI agent and refine it until a point where it's like, okay, this is great. And then you can have, so now you can use that as a source of intelligence for the agent to say, okay, now I want to refactor this module. You have all the details for how it works. I want to pull out these 3 business rules into this module, these 4 business rules into this other module, and so on and so forth. Down the line, you can even have it start creating unit tests for those as well. All right. So some key takeaways. I think I mentioned this before, but just to reiterate, right? The skills are guidance, but the enforcement loop is really the compilation, testing, errors, and then of course you reviewing the code as well. And then almost like I said before, having a conversation with the agent. So the context is on demand, right? It doesn't pull skills until it needs the skill. And then once it pulls it, it keeps it in the context unless the context is compacted or cleared. So 40 skills across 14 different categories. And then so I'll just, I think we covered everything here. So I don't want to just sit there and read slides. So there you go. All right. So before we do the Q&A session, Andrew kind of wanted to give a little sneak peek of what's coming up. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Yeah, so we don't have many questions from the team, and let me share my screen. I think one second. One of the key questions was, okay, how can we register on the platform? And basically, this is the website. It's very easy. Just go to generointelligence.ai and click Request Access button. So it will redirect you to this specific form. You can submit the form, and we'll walk you through the registration process. So that's simple. Now, I wanna take like a minute and talk about like Genero Intelligence as a platform, because we built Genero Intelligence as an umbrella of multiple capabilities. Today we discussed just MCP server, which is extremely powerful. That's would be the #1 capabilities that you would want to add to your AI agents, whether it's Claude Code, Cursor, Codex, and those things. But we have much more. And if you have an account, if you're already registered, you have like this page, and you have a documentation assistant. This is a very, very powerful tool and very convenient tool. So if you have any question about documentation, you can just go here, drop something, and it will give you the answer, and it will cite the specific pages from the documentation. So you can either, again, just try and do manual search, but you also can just go here and start conversation with the documentation assistant. One quick note, this is specifically for documentation. It's not tailored to generate you the code. Your Claude Code, Cursor, and other agents with solid models, they will be much better with code generation. But you would use this tool if you want to get some information from the documentation, right? So that's important. Now, Mike mentioned about teasing some capabilities. Yes, and since we built Genero Intelligence as an umbrella, I want to show you some capabilities that are possible today, and I want to get your feedback on those, if those capabilities would resonate with you, because we're trying to build offering based on the customer's feedback. And one of the most frequently asked question we hear from customers is advanced user experience, advanced UI and UX capabilities. And what we're trying to do, we're trying to see if we can build the catalog of widgets that we can share with you, so you don't have to learn JavaScript, TypeScript, React, how to build those widgets, right? So you can just get those widgets and wire those widgets in your forms like this. It's a very simple and straightforward approach, right? You already know Genero. You know how to build pair files, how to build forms. In here, what you can see right now, and by the way, This is a public link. If you want to test it, just go ahead and test it. Just please. I don't think that you will be able to break anything, but that is a good example. So on this screen, you can see it's a GPC. It's native GPC window, native GPC screen, and a fully custom, advanced, and performant data table. So this data table, you can see it has 20,000 rows, multiple columns, and we can do so many different things. So you can do filtering by the column. You can do global search. Let's say our alone, that's the city, right? And then you can do something like category grouping, and you can get even like average amounts, totals, and all those things. So this sort of capability is already possible, and that's exactly what we're going to share with you. There will be more details on the catalog of widgets by WWDC. But again, this is something that we're looking at, and we do want to get your feedback on this sort of capabilities, because we can build so many different things, right? And again, this is one the reason why we built like specifically this widget or web component, because multiple customers asked us about performant data tables that you can do. So you can do like this, and you can do CSV export, and it's fully powered by the keyboard, so you can do everything just using the keyboard. And again, the key point, in order to use, you can drop this widget into any Genero application. You don't have to run any JavaScript because you already know Genero, right? And that's how you use that widget inside of your code. Now, we can move forward, and we can do interactive maps like this, right? It's a fully interactive map with information about the data point. By the way, this application, it's a different one, but it's based on the same table. Because here on this table, we have GPS coordinates, and here you can see how we can navigate and do lots of cool things. We can do filtering. So imagine having that today in your applications. And of course, dashboards. The same thing, pretty much very similar wiring into your Genero application with zero knowledge of JavaScript. And we can go even further. We can do pivot tables, right? That's a fully featured pivot table inside of your Genero application, rendered through GPC based on the table, which has 20,000 rows. So that's how we envision advanced UI and UX capabilities, and that's exactly how we want to empower you. So you have advanced capabilities for your Genero application. So yeah, let us know if you see something that is very relevant, and if you want to try and see how that works in your applications. Now, one last part about development and about amazing observability capabilities that you can do with your Genero application. So let's take a look at this code. Right, so it's a standard 4GL application, and we have the function view dashboard, right? That function that makes multiple calls. Those functions, they do SQL queries, they do some other calls, and so on and so on. Now, how can you do observability of this process? How can you get inside? How can you get information? What's going on? How much time we spend for each of those calls? How much time we spend for SQL queries, and so on and so on. So today, DVM can give you that information, a lot of this information. We already ship out of the box very advanced and detailed login options, right? You can enable those login options through specific flags, and you'll get all of that information. But you'll get a challenge. Those logs, they're very detailed, they have everything, but they're just plain text files. If you want to get some insights, it might be quite challenging. So what we're trying to do, we want to simplify your life and give your Genero development more efficient. So we're trying to offer you the view like this. So basically, with zero changes, right? It's your DVM logs. We can convert those logs into the picture like this. So here you can see modern traces view. You see the function name, view dashboard. That's basically, look at this. This is the function. And we have the call stack. Here you can see all of the functions. You can get insight into each function. Here you can see a SQL query with different verbs. So this one was like SQL execute verb query. And if you drill down, you can even get the line number, because we have that information from Genero logs, right? You can get line number, where exactly, like what kind of line inside of our application executed the SQL query. So that's another level of capabilities, right, that we're trying to offer. And yeah, let us know if that's something that you think could be really valuable for you, because I think we do think that it might be extremely valuable, especially when you're trying to profile your applications. You may have very complex systems, and you want to know where exactly that time is going, what's going on, what kind of SQL queries we execute, what kind of function call stack we have, and so on and so on. So yeah, let us know. And that's kind of like a preview, right? What's possible. And yeah, let us know what do you think if you see that valuable for you. Right. That's everything on my side. Let me stop sharing.
Yeah, I'll take back control here. All right. All right.
So I think we have one question. What version of Genero Studio will have the AI tools built in? So that's still on the table, because there are different options how you can enable Genero, how you can enable AI tooling inside of the Genero Studio. We're considering two different options, enabling the terminal inside of the Genero Studio. So once terminal is enabled, you can technically run Claude code, open code, codecs inside of Genero Studio. And that will give you the best of two worlds. Another option, we're considering to build in the custom agent that, yeah, will be native to Genero Studio. But again, that's still on the table, it's still in the works. And once it's ready, once it's out, yes, you will know the first. Okay, another question. So the top is reading the logs that have been written regardless, no extra energy needed by the DVM. Correct. So you just need to activate the logs, and the top will be able to read those logs, convert them, and send traces like standard OLTP traces to whatever system you have. So the screenshot you've seen, that's from Datadog. We can do Datadog, we can do Splunk, we can do open source options like Jaeger, Grafana, like anything, because it's just, yeah, it's the standard observability protocol that we're supporting. So yeah, we're really just providing an easier view into the logs that have been created regardless. Correct. Yes. Not just the view, it's just the way how you would, technically it's a view, but it's much more than just a beautiful picture, because that picture gives you a lot of information, right? Lots of information, because we already have that information from DVM log. Michael, that's the question for you regarding the schema file.
Oh, what was it? Yeah, I can't see the question, so can you?
Okay. So when you share schema file you showed with the AI Genero, where is that information stored? What happens to our source code if we share it for analysis, etc.? I can address.
Yeah.
Michael made a really good point. We do not take your code, like, because it's from MCP to your agent, right? And then agent that you run on your local machine does the reasoning using LLM, whatever LLM you use. By the way, when you do code generation and AI-assisted engineering, please don't use the smallest and cheapest models, because smallest and cheapest models, they're really fast, they're cheap, they might be free, but they will not give you the level of advanced level of reasoning. You will not get the proper code. I would suggest to use the best models. So it's Opus and Codex GPT 5.5, so the latest and the greatest models.
Yeah. So And I think, so if you're worried about the LLM getting your source code, so the best thing to do is obviously talk with your organization. But if you have a private paid subscription, most of the time there's an option to basically opt in. So do you want the LLM to learn from your source code or not? If you don't opt in, then it basically keeps your code private and it doesn't learn from it. It doesn't expose it for other people to use.
Cool.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, but that was my understanding.
Yeah, correct. Good.
Okay.
Now there is a question: will the skills include compatibility with older Genero versions? So I think at this point we cover version 6, and that basically means version 5 is covered as well. Before 5, that's on the table. Maybe we'll have some skills to cover that. I don't know if there are like significant differences.
Yeah, so we've actually used it on projects that are using Genero version 4, and like every once in a while you might run into an issue where, okay, there's something that's either not supported anymore, or it could have used a newer syntax, or if it tries to use a new syntax, it gets compile error, but it will self-adjust. So you might have to go through an extra iteration, right? Because if you're in an older version, it might try to use var variable name equals whatever, and that's not supported in an older version, and it'll fix it and then use define instead. So you can still use it with older versions. The other thing too is all the skills have been verified with Genero version 5, not 6, just because 5 and 6 are pretty much the same, as at least from a DVM perspective. But yes, you can use it, and we're also, so again, the idea is to continue improving the skills. So the idea is that to create specific skills from upgrading, let's say to like 3.0 or 3.1 or 3.2 to the latest version, version 6.
All right. We have one more question. Would you take a few minutes to review the architecture at the beginning? Yeah, I think Mike covered the key aspects of the architecture, but I can reiterate the key aspects. So the way how you would use AI agent and write Genero code with AI agent, you have your local machine, right? I mean, it might be local. You can have like VM somewhere in the cloud, but the key point is that you have the full ownership of AI agent, right? Because that's your application. That's Claude Code, VS Code, Cursor, it doesn't matter. You own it. That's what you have. Now, MCP server, that MCP service, that's the service which is external to your agent. MCP service does not process any code from you, does not process anything from you. You may think about MCP servers as just a simple REST API that you ask a question, let's say, give me the skill, how to run SQL queries or how to build the forms. And MCP server will respond you with the specific skill sections, specific skill details, and all this stuff. Now, once agent gets that skill, the agent applies that skill to your code, sends to LLM. LLM does reasoning, but that happens outside of our MCP servers, right? That's the key point. And we specifically designed this architecture to work that way, so we do not touch your code, right? When agent communicates with MCP servers, there is no need for the agent to send the code, because we don't do code generation, we don't do code processing. It's just MCP service. That's the very efficient knowledge base, right? That can give you some information like best practices, how to construct some logical components within your code, and so on and so on.
Yeah, so I have the architecture up. So like if I give a practical example, like I had the product table before, and I just asked it, understand what the product table is. So in that situation, right, it like that, if you think about it this way, the LLM is the brain, right? That's what's making the decision. So the agent, obviously it has some orchestration in there, plans and everything, but it needs to say, okay, here's the schema file, and then it communicates with the LLM. But at some point the agent's like, okay, anytime I get to a situation where it's Genero specific, then I'm going to ask the Genero service, tell me about a Genero schema file. and it's going to give back the information like this is how it's formatted. It's table, caret, colon, caret, and then the information. And so then the agent's going to break those down, and it's going to basically give that information to the LLM, and then the LLM is going to process and say, okay, here's the field name, here's the data type, here's whether it's null or not, and all of those things. So the agent kind of brokers the information from the MCP service to the LLM, right? So that the LLM is getting bits and pieces from the MCP service, and it's also getting bits and pieces from your code, and combining them together to make, to answer the question essentially, or to do a task.
All
Hopefully
right.
that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. So I don't think that we have any more
I'm gonna
questions.
go back to I'm gonna go back to the end of the slide now. All right. Yeah. So just a plug for the developer conferences. So you can use this QR code to register. But also, so we're having 5, right? 1 in Australia, 1 in France, 1 in UK, and then 1 in the United States. And then for Latin America, it'll be online.
All right.
Well, thank you very much. So this is going to be the end of the webinar. So don't just exit out. So when the webinar ends, you'll get a survey. So please fill out the survey. Hopefully you found this informative and entertaining. Probably more informative than entertaining, but all right. Thank you and have a great day. All right, I'm going to exit.